My name is Olivia, and I've always believed that love is a tapestry, woven with threads of devotion, trust, and the occasional secret that you keep even from yourself. At 34, I have a life that sparkles like the wine we pour at our Napa Valley estate, a charming husband, Ethan, whose laughter fills our home, a career as a freelance illustrator that lets me chase my passions, and weekends spent wandering vineyards under the California sun. But beneath the surface, there's a part of me that's restless, a part that dreams of something more, a forbidden spark, a moment that breaks all the rules I've so carefully followed. Ethan is my anchor, the man who knows how to make me feel seen with just a glance. His hazel eyes crinkle when he smiles, and his hands, calloused from years of working on his family's vineyard, are gentle when they pull me close. We've been married for 9 years, and I love him fiercely, but sometimes, in the quiet moments, I wonder what it would be like to step outside the lines we've drawn. I've never told him about the thoughts that creep into my mind late at night, the ones where I imagine not just him, but someone else, sharing a space so intimate it feels like a dream. The idea of a third, of a connection that blurs boundaries, is both thrilling and terrifying. It's a secret I've carried like a locked diary, never daring to open it. That autumn, we planned a weekend at the Vineyard estate, a sprawling property Ethan's family owns, with rolling hills, rows of grapevines, and a stone manor that feels like it belongs in a romance novel. It was meant to be a quiet escape, just the two of us, sipping wine by the fire, reconnecting after a hectic summer. But a few days before, Ethan mentioned that Liam, his old friend from business school, would be in town. He's been going through a rough patch, Ethan said, pouring coffee one morning. Thought it might do him good to join us for the weekend. You don't mind, do you, Liv? I shook my head, smiling, but my heart did a little flip. Liam wasn't just any friend. He was the kind of man who left an impression, like a song you can't stop humming. I'd met him a few times, at a fundraiser, a dinner party, once at a bar where his presence seemed to shift the air. Tall, with dark curls and a jawline that could cut glass, Liam had a quiet intensity, a way of looking at you that felt like he was unraveling your secrets. His voice, low and smooth, lingered in my memory, and I'd caught myself thinking about him more than I should. It was harmless, I told myself, a fleeting attraction, nothing more. But the idea of him joining us, in the intimate setting of the vineyard, sent a shiver of anticipation through me. We arrived at the estate on Friday afternoon, the sun casting golden light over the vines. The manor was breathtaking, with ivy climbing its stone walls, wide windows that caught the sunset, and a terrace overlooking the valley. Ethan carried our bags inside, his arm brushing mine as he teased me about my overpacked suitcase. You planning to wear every dress you own this weekend? He asked, his grin boyish and warm. I laughed, swatting his arm, but my mind was already wandering, imagining the night ahead. Liam arrived just as we were setting out dinner on the terrace, a spread of charcuterie, fresh bread, and a bottle of the estate's best Cabernet. He stepped out of his sleek black car, wearing a fitted navy sweater and jeans, a leather weekender bag slung over his shoulder. Olivia, he said, his voice like velvet as he crossed the terrace. You make this place look even more beautiful. His eyes held mine a moment too long, and I felt a flush creep up my neck. Liam, always the charmer, I said, trying to keep my tone light, but Ethan's laugh broke the moment, his hand resting on my lower back as he greeted his friend. The three of us settled at the table, the air filled with the scent of grapes and the soft hum of crickets. The wine flowed, and so did the conversation, stories of Ethan and Liam's college days, my own tales of illustrating children's books, dreams we'd chased and left behind. Liam had a way of listening, his gaze steady and attentive, that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. I caught myself watching him, the way his fingers traced the rim of his glass, the way his lips curved when he smiled. Ethan was relaxed, his arm draped over the back of my chair, his fingers grazing my shoulder. But there was something in the air, a subtle shift, like the moment before a storm. Maybe it was the wine, or the way the candlelight flickered, but I felt a pull, a magnetism that drew the three of us closer. I imagined what it would be like to reach across the table, to brush my hand against Liam's, to feel Ethan's eyes on me as I did. The thought was so vivid it made my breath hitch, and I excused myself to fetch another bottle from the cellar, needing a moment to collect myself. The cellar was cool and dim, the air heavy with the scent of oak and earth. I ran my fingers along the bottles, trying to steady my racing heart. The fantasy I'd buried for so long was clawing its way to the surface, and I didn't know how to push it back down. I loved Ethan more than anything, but I couldn't deny the way Liam's presence stirred something in me, something wild and uncharted. Lost in thought? Liam's voice startled me, and I turned to find him leaning against the cellar doorway, his silhouette framed by the soft light from the stairs. He looked effortless, his sweater hugging his frame, his eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite name. "Just choosing a bottle," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "Any requests?" He stepped closer, his gaze never leaving mine. "Something bold," he said, his voice low, like a secret. "Something that surprises you." My pulse quickened, and I felt the space between us shrink, the air thick with unspoken possibility. "Careful, Liam," I said, trying to keep it playful. "You're playing with fire." He smiled, slow and deliberate, and I felt a rush of heat. "Maybe I like the burn," he said, and there was a teasing edge to his voice, but his eyes were serious, searching mine. Before I could respond, Ethan's voice called from the top of the stairs. "You two okay down there? Don't let Liv talk you into the expensive stuff, Liam." His tone was light, but I wondered if he sensed the tension, the current running between us. "We're behaving," Liam called back, his smile never fading, and we returned to the terrace, a new bottle in hand. But the night felt different now, charged with something I couldn't ignore. Ethan's hand found mine as we sat, his thumb brushing slow circles, and I felt Liam's gaze on us, warm and steady. I let myself imagine it, just for a moment, what it would be like to lean into that warmth, to let the boundaries between us dissolve. As the evening wore on, we moved inside, the Manor's living room glowing with the light of a roaring fire. Ethan suggested a game of truth or dare, a playful nod to their college days, and we laughed as we settled on the plush rug, the wine making us bold. The dares were silly at first, Ethan singing a terrible karaoke version of a pop song, me attempting a cartwheel and nearly knocking over a lamp. But the truths grew deeper, more revealing. Liam admitted to a heartbreak that still stung, Ethan shared a fear of losing what we'd built, and I, when it was my turn, hesitated, my heart pounding. "Truth," I said, my voice barely audible. Liam leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his eyes locked on mine. "What's the one thing you've always wanted to do?" he asked, but never had the courage to try. The room was silent, the fire crackling, the weight of his question pressing against me. I could have lied, could have said something safe, but the truth was burning inside me. "I've always wondered," I said, my voice trembling, "what it would be like to explore something new. With Ethan. And someone else." The words hung in the air, heavy and raw. Ethan's hand tightened on mine, and I braced myself for his reaction, for the hurt I was sure would come. But instead, he looked at me, his eyes dark with something that wasn't anger but curiosity, maybe even desire. "Liv," he said, his voice low, "you've never told me that." Liam's gaze moved between us, his expression unreadable but intense. "Sounds like a conversation worth having," he said, and there was no judgment in his voice, only invitation. The game ended, but the night didn't. We talked, the three of us, in whispers and glances, the fire casting shadows on the walls. Ethan's hand stayed in mine, grounding me, while Liam's presence felt like a flame, drawing us closer. I didn't have answers, but I had this moment, this chance to be honest, to see where honesty might lead. We ended up on the terrace again, the night air cool against my skin, the stars bright above the vines. Ethan stood behind me, his arms around my waist, his breath warm against my neck. Liam leaned against the railing, his eyes on us, and I felt a surge of courage, a need to bridge the space between us. "Ethan," I whispered, turning to face him. "What if we didn't hold back? Just for tonight?" He looked at me, then at Liam, and a slow smile curved his lips. "I think," he said, his voice steady, "we're all wondering the same thing." Liam stepped closer, his presence filling the space, and I felt the world tilt, the rules we'd lived by fading into the night. We didn't rush, didn't push, but every glance, every brush of fingers, was a step into the unknown. The vineyard stretched out before us, endless and wild, and I knew this night would change us, not because of what we did, but because of what we dared to feel. By the time the fire died down, we were tangled in a quiet intimacy, not defined by labels but by connection. Ethan's hand in mine, Liam's laughter soft in the air, and me, Olivia, the dreamer, the wife, the woman who'd finally opened her heart to possibility. The vines whispered in the breeze, and I felt alive, free, like I'd found a piece of myself I hadn't known was missing. The weekend ended, but the memory of that night lingered, a secret woven into the tapestry of our love. It wasn't about breaking rules, but about bending them, about discovering that love could be bigger, braver, than I'd ever imagined. And as we drove back to the city, Ethan's hand on my knee, I knew we'd carry that night with us, a spark that would never fade.